"You're not welcome here," my teacher said. 15 years later, she applied for a job at my company. What happens when a teacher who once crushed a child's dream steps on stage in front of 100 kids just like him? What she said next brought the entire room to a standstill. You won't believe who forgave her first. Jamal Holden wasn't trying to be some kind of teacher's pet or overachiever. He wasn't after stars on a chart or extra credit stickers. Nah, it wasn't like that. That morning, when he walked into Greenwood Elementary a full 30 minutes before the first bell, he wasn't looking for praise. He just wanted to finish his drawing. Something about it felt important, like it needed to be done right, not rushed in between reading time and spelling drills. It was for the school art show, a cutesy little thing they called kindness through the eyes of a child. Jamal's picture showed him helping an elderly black woman step onto a crowded bus. Nothing fancy, just a young boy holding out his hand, smiling while others in the background ignored her. Simple, maybe, but for Jamal, 6 years old and already learning how to read a room better than most grown folks, that drawing meant something. It was a scene that stuck in his head, not because it happened to him, but because he'd wanted it to. He'd seen old ladies get ignored, heard them mutter, "Don't worry, I got it," while struggling with grocery bags and walkers. No one ever paid them any mind. So, yeah, he drew what should happen, and he was proud of it. His backpack, worn at the seams, held a glue stick, a handful of Crayola markers, 2 of them drying out, and a crinkled, snack-sized bag of gummy bears. Those weren't for him. Those were for Ms. Grace, the janitor who always gave him a warm nod and said, "Keep shining, baby," when she passed him in the halls. His mama called that quiet kindness, the kind nobody claps for, but everybody remembers. The classroom smelled like fresh wax and leaf dust, like the hallway floor had just been mopped and someone had dragged October in on their shoes. Jamal slid into his seat, pulled out his sketchbook, and gently flipped to the page with his drawing. He was working on the grandmother's headscarf, shading in the wrinkles just right, when the door slammed open like someone had a vendetta against hinges. That's when it happened. "Boy, what are you doing in here?" The voice sliced through the stillness, sharp and dry as old chalk. Miss Carter, first-grade queen of cold shoulders, pursed lips, and judging eyes. She stood in the doorway like she owned the entire zip code. I just wanted to finish my project," Jamal said, voice soft but clear. "It's for the art. Did someone tell you to be in here, or did you decide the rules don't apply to you this morning?" Her gaze hit like a ruler, not the soft wooden kind either. One of those metal ones, precision tools. She wasn't asking for answers. She was scanning for guilt. "I just wanted too much wanting," she snapped, striding forward. She reached out, snatched the drawing from his desk, looked it over with a frown like it was something diseased, then tossed it onto the far corner of the table. "You've had enough attention for the week. Go, lock her now, and don't come back until the bell rings. You hear me?" Jamal stood there for a second, not moving, not blinking, just watching his picture, his kindness, lying face down like it did something wrong. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered barely. And just like that, something in him bent. Not broke, not yet, but bent, like a young tree forced sideways by wind that wasn't supposed to blow that hard in first grade. Later that day was appreciation hour, a sweet-sounding mess of an assignment where kids were told to cut out paper flowers and write things like patience, respect, and hope on the petals. They'd be added to the wall of values near the library. Jamal, quiet and focused as ever, made 3. One said patience, because clearly he needed more of it. Another said respect, even though he hadn't seen much of it that day. And the third said hope, not because he felt it, but because maybe if he stared at the word long enough, he might start believing in it again. He stepped up to Miss Carter's table, flowers in hand, just like they'd been instructed. Everyone else was already posting theirs up, laughing, chatting, proud. "What's this?" Her voice cracked like ice underfoot. "You think you can just stick things wherever you want now?" I just, same as the others." "No," she snapped. "Not the same. This wall is for students who understand discipline, Jamal, who follow directions. You can sit back down. You're not needed here." Right there, in front of the whole damn class. That wasn't just a cold dismissal. That was a public cancellation. Jamal's heart didn't break. It curled up inside him like it was trying to hide from the world. His body went back to his seat, sure, but his spirit, that part of him stayed right there at her desk, lying beside the paper flowers like it'd been thrown out too. The kids didn't say anything, but they shifted. Subtle. One leaned to the left, another scooted an inch away. No one met his eyes, like they'd just watched someone get struck by lightning and were scared the same storm might come for them. Kevin, that banker's son, who always smelled like cologne and entitlement, passed by with a smirk and a whisper. Told you she couldn't stand you. You're like burnt toast. Don't matter how you spread it, she ain't biting. Jamal didn't flinch. He just stared at the back of his desk and let the heat build in his hands. That night at home, he walked in without a word, dropped his backpack like it had offended him, and slumped into the kitchen chair. His mother, still in scrubs, her apron speckled with flour and peppermint from baking after her shift, served him a bowl of soup and kissed his forehead. What's wrong, baby? She asked, running her fingers gently through his tight coils. She said, I don't belong there, he muttered, that I'm not needed. His mother paused. The spoon she held tapped the side of the pot once, then stopped. She sat next to him and took his small, trembling hand in hers. The warmth of her palm said everything her words were about to say. Listen to me, Jamal. Don't you ever let someone who's scared of your shine tell you to dim it. You hear me? They don't get to decide your place in this world. He nodded, but that night, staring at the ceiling in the dark, he wondered, but what if they're right? The next morning, Miss Carter called him to the board, not to praise, not even to scold, but to perform as an example of what not to do. Class, she said with that ice-chip smile, this is what happens when someone mistakes being loud for being helpful. There's a difference between participating and being disruptive. She might as well have held a red flag above his head. The class giggled. A few chuckled outright. Jamal stood there, his tiny shoulders square, his jaw tight. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. But deep inside, the fire was lighting, the one that says, I see you. I see how you play this game, and I won't forget it. 2 months later, Kevin brushed past him in the locker room and sneered. Miss Carter says you're like a weed. No matter where you grow, you still don't belong. Jamal didn't hit him, didn't even raise his voice. He just looked him square in the eyes and said, weeds grow too, just not in your garden. And with that, he zipped up his coat, straightened his back, and walked out. Paper flower still folded in his pocket, like a promise he intended to keep. 15 years later, Jamal Holden walked through the revolving glass doors of a building that bore his name, not metaphorically, not as some honorary plaque in a hallway. No, sir, his name was etched in stone, or more precisely in sleek, sandblasted glass above the front entrance. Holden Industries. Letters so bold, so clean, they almost hummed. And for every kid who was ever told they didn't belong, that sign was a battle cry, a declaration, a raised fist with font. Inside, everything gleamed. Chrome edges, warm walnut paneling, conference rooms named after Black inventors, framed photos of classrooms, neighborhoods, and faces that didn't usually get to decorate the walls of billion-dollar firms. But Holden Industries wasn't built for comfort. It was built for justice in disguise, the kind that taught coding to middle schoolers whose schools still used textbooks from the 90s. Jamal paused near the main elevator. The silence of success had a different sound. It wasn't loud, it was heavy, purposeful, like the air before a thunderstorm. And inside his office, the one with wraparound windows and an actual fig tree in the corner, hung the thing that started it all, a wrinkled paper daisy. One of those classroom cutouts you glue to butcher paper during Appreciation Week. His said hope. He'd written it in a shaky hand when he was 6, right before being told he wasn't welcome to contribute to the wall of kindness. Now it sat in a black frame, right next to a patent for adaptive learning, AI. Both relics, both revolutions, both reminders. That morning wasn't supposed to be anything special, just a round of interviews for a new outreach coordinator. The project was big, building tech-driven educational partnerships with public schools, especially in underserved communities. Challenging environments, the grant proposal had said, but Jamal didn't need euphemisms. He was that kid, the one who got written off, talked down to, told he was a lot to handle. Translation, too black, too bold, too bright for their comfort. And then, just as he was scrolling through candidate profiles, sipping coffee that cost more than his 6th grade lunch budget, he saw it. The name hit him like someone smacked the back of his head. Rachel Anna Carter. For a second, he thought it had to be a coincidence. A different Rachel Carter, maybe. But then came the photo. The same hard jawline, the same stiff smile, the same cautious eyes. Her resume was just as telling. Public school teacher, district instructional coach, Charlotte County, early 2000s through 2022. It all aligned. Miss, you don't belong here. Miss, let's not disrupt the other students. And now, she was applying to his company. He stood up slowly, pushed away from his desk and walked toward the massive window, looking out over the city that had once ignored him. His fingers tapped against the sill. Not from anger. This wasn't rage. It was something else, something deeper. That hum between your ribs when life throws you a mirror from 15 years ago. Next applicant ready? His assistant's voice buzzed through the intercom. He exhaled, a long, slow breath. Yeah, send her in. She entered like she'd never been dismissed a day in her life. Gray pantsuit, pearl earrings, resume in hand. That same walk, like every floor was hers to command. She didn't recognize him. Why would she? To her, he was just another gatekeeper. Another nameplate on a desk. One more professional with a tie and power. But he recognized her. Oh, he remembered every detail. Not because he held a grudge, but because some memories tattoo themselves on your bones. Ms. Carter, he said, voice smooth but steady. Thank you for coming. Tell me, what drew you to this position? She straightened, rehearsed confidence. A teacher's smile, polished and polite. I've spent my life working with children, she began, especially those who come from challenging backgrounds. Students who need mentorship, guidance, and the right influence to see their potential. Jamal's eyebrow twitched, just a hair. Students like who? He asked. She hesitated. Just a flicker. Well, students from underserved communities, kids who may not have strong support systems, who need structure and encouragement. He let the words hang in the air. Watch them fall. And you believe you're the right person to offer that? I do. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. I've worked with all types of children. I know how to reach the ones others overlook. The irony, he thought, like watching the wolf apply to guard the hen house. He stood up slowly, walked around the desk, not to intimidate, but to witness her. Up close, without a filter. What year did you start teaching? He asked. She blinked. 1998. And you taught at Central Elementary in 2010? Her eyes narrowed. Yes, I did. Why? He looked her dead in the face. My name is Jamal Holden. I was one of your first grade students. Silence, heavy as wet cement. She froze, not like someone caught in a lie, but like someone watching a ghost rise out of a floorboard. She began, lips trembling. I didn't realize. You told me I didn't belong in your classroom because I came early one morning to finish a drawing. You tore it from my hands, said it wasn't my place. Her cheeks drained of color. Her mouth opened, then closed. That was a long time ago, she said finally. Children, sometimes they misinterpret things. I don't remember. Oh, I remember. His voice didn't rise, but it filled the room like thunder without rain. I remember because that was the first time I learned that kindness can make people uncomfortable when it comes from the wrong kind of child. I'm sorry, Jamal. I truly am. I was overwhelmed. I didn't understand back then. He raised a hand, not to silence her, but to pause the script he'd heard 100 times from people in power who suddenly remembered they were human. Do you think that pain goes away with time? That a 6-year-old forgets being told he's not wanted? No, she whispered. I don't think that. And you think saying sorry is enough to erase it? No, she said again, a bit stronger. But maybe I can do something right now. I can help others avoid the same mistakes. He stared, hard, not cruel, measured, like weighing whether a fallen tree can still bear fruit. Why did you leave the district? I was let go. Downsizing, budget cuts. They kept the younger ones. I've been applying ever since. Private schools? They don't hire older public school educators, especially not without tech training. He nodded, slowly, turned, walked back to his chair, sat, opened her resume, page after page of awards, certifications, seminars. On paper, she was pristine, but the question remained, was there anything living in those lines? He looked up. I have one requirement, he said. If we move forward, you'll have to speak to our partner students, all from challenging backgrounds, just like you described, and I'll expect you to tell them the truth. She stiffened. What truth? That you once silenced a child, that you told him he didn't belong, that you were wrong. Her lips pressed tight, eyes glossy now. If that truth gives them strength, she said, then yes, I'll say it, on stage, out loud. He didn't smile, didn't soften. He typed a note on his tablet. Invite Ms. Carter to second round. Public session. Let the students decide. She had no idea this wasn't just an interview. It was a reckoning. The auditorium was packed. No, stuffed to the rafters. Teachers standing against the back wall. Parents lined the aisles. School administrators sat with rigid posture. And most importantly, children from 6 different districts filled the rows, talking, texting, shifting in their seats. Over 100 young faces, wired, restless, expecting the usual motivational speech with empty platitudes. They were all here for one reason: Voice of the Students, a Holden Industries initiative promising real chance for students from communities long overlooked. Parents felt hope, teachers felt cautious optimism, Administrators, fueled by grant money and buzz charts, smiled for the cameras. And yet nobody in the room knew who would be leading this ship as the outreach coordinator, or at least not yet, except Jamal. He watched from backstage beyond the curtains, watching her walk up carefully, Rachel Carter holding a clean sheet of paper, a printed speech pressed between her fingers. She wore a charcoal blazer buttoned tight, no flare, no attempt at image. Her hair was pulled back, nothing excessive. Minimal makeup. Her eyes flicked left, then right. Her shoulders were tense but not bowed. That look in her gaze, some trace of fear or reverence, almost made Jamal's chest ache. A precise tug like a familiar chord in a song long forgotten. From somewhere, back near the wings, someone murmured, "Is that our candidate? A bit old school?" Jamal didn't even turn. He folded his arms, voice soft behind the curtain. "She is exactly who we need. If she can do it, if she can do it." That was the question. Could she stand in this auditorium, bold, unshielded, before a crowd of students who could easily dislike her, or worse, see her as irrelevant? Before families who'd seen leaders parachute in and bail out? Before educators accustomed to polished speeches, but not raw truths? The hush swept through the room as Rachel approached the mic. Some kids already had their phones out, ready to snap or scroll. One kid down front smirked, loud enough for her to hear. "What is this old lady gonna tell us?" Rachel paused, didn't falter. She inhaled deeply, placed both hands on the stand. "Many years ago, I was a teacher in Charlotte County, and one day," her voice cracked, barely in control. "One day, I told a 6-year-old boy that he was not welcome in my classroom. You would have heard a pin drop. Even the students, a crew used to chaos, fell quiet. Phones slid into laps, backs straightened. The weight in the air said, 'This is real.' I said it not because he was bad, not because he did anything wrong, but because he was different, because I was blind." That last word rattled the walls. Nothing scrolled, nothing buzzed. The hush settled into a pressure thick enough to choke on. "And that boy," she continued, voice steadying, "that boy is in this room now. He built all of this project, this platform, this stage, and he offered me the chance to stand here when he absolutely could have shown me the door." She paused again. More powerful silence, like the moment when thunder subsides after the last roll. The students and adults leaned forward at once. "I did not deserve that. I did not earn forgiveness. I am not here to ask him. I'm here to ask you, all of you, who've ever felt unseen, unwelcome, silenced in a classroom, please forgive me. I was part of the system that told you your voice didn't matter." Somewhere off to a corner, a custodian blinked back tears. A principal wiped her eyes discreetly. Melissa, a middle schooler with a chipped tooth, folded hands tight in her lap, tears shining in her eyes. Rachel dropped the paper. "Let it lie." She placed her hands on the stand and gazed at the students. "I am not reading from this anymore. I'm here to learn from you. If you'll allow me to join you, I will start over. Not as your teacher or an authority figure, but as someone who finally learned how to listen." The first notes of a silence-soaked breath slid from one corner of the audience, then another. And then came the girl, 10 years old, braided hair, big round glasses, who stood so tentatively, like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "We forgive you." Her voice was small but firm. It echoed and grew. Soft applause at first, then brisk, then unstoppable. Applause like thawing ice. Applause like acknowledgement. Applause like the weight had lifted from everyone's chest in that room at once. Behind the curtain, Jamal's voice shook. Not because he was emotionally unsteady, but because relief is still a storm. Weeks of wondering how she'd handle it. Years of imagining some petty payback. Then this. Humanity. Real, unscripted, exquisite. Later, the auditorium emptied. Custodians swept. Lights dimmed. The hall became echoes. Rachel knocked gently on the closed door of his office. He called, "Come in," voice measured but softening. The door shut. They stood only a few feet apart, morning light filtering through tinted windows, painting half the room in a muted glow. "I didn't think I could do it," she said, voice low. A confession, a void being filled. "You did," he replied, sitting behind his desk. No lectern, just him. His eyes calm but kind. She stared at her feet. "I was always afraid of strong students," she admitted, raising her head slowly. "Especially ones who force you to see where you fell short." Jamal watched her, not with triumph, not with judgment, just honesty mixed with grace. "Now you know what it's like to be uncomfortable in a good way," he said. "You know how that intensity feels. Welcome to the club." She nodded, a small shudder beneath the nod, an invisible armor breaking open. Night fell. Wilson turned on lights in the city below, and Jamal walked onto the rooftop terrace of Holden Industries. The surfaces glowed under low hum of city traffic, cars sparkling like swarms of fireflies on the expressways, windows flickering. He held the framed paper Daisy, yellowed now, the scrawled text visible. People matter most. He'd carried that flower with him years ago like a talisman, kept it folded gently in his pocket when he graduated, when his first job offer came, when he launched Holden Industries. Now it returned to the open. If he believed in symbols, this was his baptism, his reckoning, his truth. He stared at the city, its pulse echoing his own. 15 years of tension, pain, unanswered questions, all culminating in a single moment of raw humanity. Forgiveness, not as a transaction, not as currency, but as the seed for something stronger, something unbreakable. The stage, the speech, the girl's forgiveness, they all transform pieces of Elizabeth Street Elementary, life before the academy, and all those rooms where young black kids were told to shrink. Tonight he let that daisy breathe again, let it glow in his hands, and he finally believed, no, knew that the wounds of the past didn't have to define the soul of the future. They could shape it. They could be the wings beneath a gift he never knew he carried.